Good afternoon. Here we are, Books and Coffee, Chapter 3. We're reading Onward by Howard Schultz. Very fun book. Let's get started. Here we go. Chapter 3. Surfacing. Work should be personal. For all of us, not just for the artist and the entrepreneur. Work should have a meaning for the accountant, the construction worker, the technologist, the manager, and the clerk. Yes, sadly that is not the case. Infusing work with purpose and meaning, however, is a two-way street. Yes, love what you do, but your company should love you back. As a merchant, my desire has always been to inspire customers, exceed their high expectations, and establish and maintain their trust in us. As an employer, my duty has always been to also do the same for people on the other side of the counter, for our partners. This latter responsibility has driven me for many, many years. When I was 7 years old, I came home from school one winter day and saw my father sprawled on a couch with a cast from his hip to his ankle. My dad was an uneducated war veteran, and while he was very proud, he never really found his spot in the world. He held a series of really tough blue-collar jobs to support our family, never making more than $20,000 a year. He'd been a truck driver, a factory worker, and even a cab driver for a while, but his current job was the worst. He drove a truck picking up and delivering cloth diapers. That week, Dad had fallen on a sheet of ice and broken his hip and his ankle, and for a blue-collar worker in 1960, there was no workers' compensation, no health care coverage, no severance. My dad was simply sent home after his accident and dismissed by the company. I never imagined I would one day be in a position to run a company a different way. But I did believe, even then, that everyone deserved more respect than my parents had received. By the time my father passed away in 1988 from lung cancer, he had no savings or pension, just as tragic in my mind was that he never found fulfillment or meaning in his work. As a business leader, I wanted to build the kind of company that my dad never got a chance to work for. But like crafting the perfect cup of coffee, creating an engaging, respectful, trusting workplace culture is not the result of any one thing. It's a combination of intent, process, and heart, a trio that must constantly be fine-tuned. Sometimes we've gotten it very right. Other times we've faltered. People at Starbucks, in our offices, as well as in our stores, work very, very hard. The jobs can be stressful because we set a high bar, and at the end of the day, I want each person to go home feeling that he or she made a difference. By the year 2000, I was the one ready to take on new challenges. After running Starbucks' daily operations for almost 15 years, something inside me had shifted. The company was performing exceptionally well. With 2,600 stores in 13 countries, our revenue was just shy of $2 billion. Since 1992, we had achieved a compounded annual growth rate of 49%. Yet I was feeling down, at times almost depressed. I talked with Sherry about my change in mood, and after much soul-searching, concluded that my job was not as challenging as it had been for so many years. I was still passionate about Starbucks, but also a bit bored. I can relate. Leaving, of course, was not an option, but with my engagement less than it needed to be for the health of the company, I decided that the time was right to step away from overseeing day-to-day operations. To replace me as CEO, the board of directors, and I appointed our president and chief operating officer at the time, Orrin C. Smith. Wise, thoughtful, and affable. Orrin had joined Starbucks in 1990 as chief financial officer. He shared my vision, was well respected by partners and investors, and had an admirably measured approach to solving complex problems. I trusted him. He trusted me. and we had a decade-long history of making decisions together. He knew the company inside and out and would continue to strengthen the core business and invest in growth. Warren committed to spending 5 years as CEO. I turned my attention to expanding Starbucks around the world. Since opening our first store outside North America in Tokyo in 1996, we had been deluged with requests to open Starbucks locations in other countries. Then as now, the opening of a Starbucks was often viewed as a sort of coming of age, a sign of arrival for a city as well as its inhabitants. At the time, Starbucks had 525 stores outside the United States, in such far-flung places as New Zealand and China. Soon, we would bring Starbucks into Spain, France, and Russia. My new role as chairman and chief global strategist was in large part to help select local companies that would operate our stores in each region. We chose these international partners very carefully, selecting only organizations whose leaders share our values. As the ambassador of the brand, it would also be my job to imprint our mission on our local representatives, to ensure the brand's consistency across cultures. I was ecstatic about the possibilities that the future held for me, as well as for the company. And during the next several years, I officiated as hundreds of store openings throughout the world. Traveling exposed me to more innovative retailers and other merchants who love for their products and professions was obvious the minute I walked into their shops. During my years as chairman, we opened U.S. stores at a rapid rate and continued to expand around the world, pushing toward a target of 20,000 stores outside of the United States. We opened in Dubai and in Hong Kong, in Saudi Arabia, in Australia, and we continued to build and open stores in our most promising growth market, China. In 2003, our new Beijing store was Starbucks' 1,000th store in Asia Pacific. The next year, we opened the first Starbucks in Paris, followed over the years by stores in the Bahamas, Brazil, Egypt, Ireland, Jordan, Northern Ireland, and Romania. One of the most touching moments abroad occurred in 2001 in Japan, the country where we opened our very first store outside North America in 1996. Japan was also the first market outside the United States and Canada where we gave full and part-time partners equity. And I will never forget the day we announced it at the regional company meeting. As I looked out over the audience, I saw that some of our partners were actually crying. Owning a piece of the company gave not just our partners in Japan, but so many of our partners a tremendous sense of pride, demonstrating that we respected our people enough to share our success. After the announcement, young people who worked in our stores in Japan approached me and explained through translators that they could not wait to go home and tell their parents because their mothers and fathers had never owned anything in their lives. Wow. It was an incredibly humbling and fulfilling day, the kind that reminded me that Starbucks is about so much more than coffee. Ironically, my days spent working back home in Seattle were often when I felt the most out of sorts. Although as chairman, I occupied the same office I had as CEO. With its expansive view of Seattle's ports and skyline, I felt somewhat lost inside our 9-story building in Utah Avenue. The role of chairman did not require me to be involved in day-to-day decisions. No longer was I a part of the same meetings and planning sessions that had once packed my calendar. And while I felt comfortable out of the trust as well as respect with leaving decisions to Orrin and his team, there were times when, walking by closed-door conference rooms, I would peer through the windows, literally feeling like an outsider looking in. During Orrin's 5 years as CEO, there was a great deal of momentum as our store count almost tripled to just more than 9,000. The company was rapidly breaking into new markets and geographies, bringing our stores to smaller metropolitan areas and suburbs. Back in the major cities, where we had always thrived, competitors were following our lead and exploding their own presences. Yet, even as more coffee shops sprang up, the lines at our stores got longer and longer. Yep, competition is good. It was during this time that Starbucks began to better understand its customers, and what they wanted was convenience in all its forms. They didn't want to wait in line for their lattes, but they also did not want to walk a few more blocks or drive an extra mile to get it. Our way to reduce wait times was to open more stores, so we grew aggressively in urban markets too. It was not easy and required hard work, but our growth felt manageable in large part because we had developed easily adaptable store designs. We also had adept real estate experts who took time to find the right store locations, yeah, as well as skilled regional district and store managers who oversaw quality. It was also during Orrin's leadership that Starbucks capitalized on opportunities to bring our coffee to people outside of our stores. We signed an agreement to supply our coffee to guests at hotels owned by Hyatt and Marriott. Expanding our store within a store concept, Starbucks was already doing business in Barnes & Noble stores, yeah. We opened standalone kiosks inside hundreds of national supermarket chains such as Safeway, Kroger, and Publix. These new sales channels provided another revenue stream, but perhaps one of the most important yet less publicized strides that Starbucks made when Orrin was CEO was to fully and formally commit itself to social responsibility. Going about our business in ways that were good for people, as well as good for the planet, is something Starbucks has always strived to do. It's part of our DNA. But beginning in the late 1990s, social responsibility also became a marketplace imperative. Most people, I have always believed, want to buy a product or a service from a company they respect and trust. Yet that respect and trust was getting harder to earn. In the United States, there had been a surge of education and media attention about environmental issues and human rights. The 2004 movie Hotel Rwanda, about the country's 1994 genocide, and the popular films such as Al Gore's global warming documentary An Inconvenient Truth in 2006 increased awareness about global issues and helped to create informed consumers. More than ever before, people wanted the goods, and they brought into their lives to be created, packaged, transported, and discarded with respect for the environment, as well as for all the people associated with our products. Our efforts came in many forms, from the reactive to the proactive. Between 2000 and 2005, the company and our individual partners committed more than $47 million to local communities around the world to support efforts such as youth and literacy programs in the United States and Canada, like Jumpstart, improved education opportunities in rural China, and aid for victim disasters such as September 11 terrorist attacks, the 2000 South Asian tsunami, and the Hurricane Katrina in 2005. With donations and thousands of volunteer hours, our partners supported charities and improvement projects in the communities where they worked. As a company, we were also joined with Global Green USA to raise environmental awareness. In 2005, when we acquired Ethos Water, we agreed to honor the brand's mission to increase access to clean drinking water for children around the world. We also began to take significant steps to reduce our store's environmental impact by purchasing renewable energy, reducing water consumption, and conserving energy. And through ongoing partnerships with global globalizations, most notably Conservation International, which works with business and policymakers to protect the Earth's most valuable resources. We participated in creative programs to further protect ecosystems and educate our own customers about issues such as climate change. Perhaps most significant was that Starbucks took more concrete steps to fulfill its commitment to ethically sourced premium coffee. When it comes to buying coffee, I've always wanted Starbucks to be a company that gives back to farmers, not only with money, but also by promoting healthy, sustainable farming communities. This has been our philosophy from the very beginning. But in the late 1900s, we began to experience vocal pushback from special interest groups. The company listened to their concerns, and while we were already doing a lot, we agreed that we could do more to formalize our intentions. In addition to Conservation International, Starbucks established a relationship with fair trade advocates and the organizations that license products as fair trade certified. This chapter is long, and my throat hurts. certification system that aims to improve. This is a lot about saving the globe and stuff. Certification system that aims to improve the livelihoods of small producers by, for example, guaranteeing them to a minimum price and connecting them to global markets. In 2001, Starbucks committed to purchasing 1 million pounds of fair trade certified coffee. Not long after, our fair trade purchases reached 10 million pounds, making us North America's largest purchaser, roaster, and retailer of fair trade green coffee beans. But we went a step further. Also in 2001, in partnership with Conservation International, we created our own sourcing guidelines, setting out a comprehensive procurement process to ensure that the coffee we bought was ethically grown and responsibly traded. We called our verification program CAFE Practices, and has identified environmental and humanitarian standards that our coffee suppliers have to comply with to do our business with Starbucks. Unique to our program is that the quality and transparency are prerequisites to participating. What's more, independent verifiers are responsible for ensuring that our standards from protecting workers' rights to conserving water and energy are indeed being measured. More often than not, they are. And because Starbucks buys only the highest quality Arabica coffee and pays for the higher prices that premium coffee commands, many farmers have agreed to participate in the program. All the while, we continue to grow the business, and by the time Orrin stepped down, Starbucks' market capitalization, the value of the company's outstanding shares, had grown from $7.2 billion to $20 billion. We're going to take a break. Got to catch my breath. Come back and read the rest of this chapter. Okay. Back after a long day of cooking. Let's finish this chapter, shall we? Okay. Okay, here. The board of directors selected Jim Donald as the next CEO. His operational background: he had run Walmart's grocery operations and later ushered in profitability turnarounds at Safeway and Pathmark, was impressive, but we were taken even more with his leadership style. You cannot meet a kinder human being. Jim possesses a natural talent for building relationships at every level of an organization. And when we hired him to head Starbucks North American operation back in 2002, everyone agreed that he embodied our company's values and brought to the job rare traits that could not be learned. Among them are heart, conscience, and emotional intelligence. In Jim's first 2 years at Starbucks, he seamlessly embraced the culture, and our culture embraced him. Tremendously well-liked, Jim's style fostered human connections. He routinely handwrote thank you notes to partners for work well done. He enjoyed visiting stores and chatting with baristas. In the office, he had a habit of stopping 1-hour meetings after 45 minutes and telling partners to use their extra 15 minutes to call someone they usually did not contact every day. When he inherited the company as CEO, Starbucks' stock at $25.83. We continued to set high bars for ourselves that Wall Street held us to, and every quarter our people felt more intense pressure to maintain annual revenue and profit increases of at least 20%. It was an ambitious, some said unattainable goal that I was admittedly complicit in actively promoting. During that time, we also extended our brand beyond our coffee core and into areas like entertainment. Where once we sold a couple of CDs, artful compilations of music we played in the stores, soon we were displaying kiosks packed with the music of an array of musicians. In a handful of stores, we experimented with music bars that let customers download songs and compile their own CDs. One of the albums we produced with Concord Records, Ray Charles's Genius Loves Company, won 8 Grammy Awards in 2005, including Album of the Year. Of the 3.2 million copies that were sold in the United States, approximately 25% were sold in Starbucks stores. Outside the United States, the album sold more than 2 million copies. We also sold books, creating several bestsellers and helping to put unknown authors on the map. This success led us to consider ourselves somewhat of a taskmaker, and in our confidence tastemaker. And in our confidence, we wondered if Starbucks could do for movies what we were doing for books and music, create hits. With that, we enthusiastically ventured into the film business, heavily promoting family-friendly fare, then selling the DVDs. I was among the company's loudest champions, intoxicated by the groundswell of opportunities that came our way. Studios wanted to pay us to promote their products. The business deals looked great on our profit and loss statements. It would be a while before I recognized that Starbucks' amplified foray into entertainment, while it had its upside, was another sign of hubris born of a sense of invincibility. We are dealing with that right now. But rest assured, we've calmed down. My relationship with Jim became complicated. I tried to give him space to do his job by forcing myself to stay out of meetings and keeping some opinions, but not all to myself. But backing off proved more challenging for me than it had been with Orrin, given our long history. In letting go of the CEO post, I had essentially agreed to trust in the decisions of others, even when my heart suggested those decisions were not wise. Like a parent standing back and watching his children make their own choices, the entrepreneur as chairman role had its unique emotional challenges. What's more, as chairman, I was not always familiar with specific operational decisions, such as where most of our new stores were being built or who we were vetting for executive positions. One of the ongoing disagreements Jim and I had was which people were best qualified to fill some of the company's most influential roles. Eventually, toward the end of 2006, partners who had been with Starbucks for many years began coming to me in confidence. They expressed a variety of concerns about the direction of the company. People wanted something other than grow, 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 a mentality that I, too, had helped to foster. I was faced with a dilemma. On one hand, I wanted to support Jim's decisions and forge ahead with our growth goals. On the other hand, the cracks I sensed in our foundation, such as deterioration in the store experience, greatly disturbed me, as did hearing concerns from third parties. I felt trapped between two poles. My quandary was intensified by my love of the company and my sense of responsibility to partners and shareholders. As 2006 progressed, Starbucks' performance began its subtle slide. The amount of money each customer was spending in our stores began to dip. By summer 2007, the growth of our store traffic slowed to levels we had never in our history seen. That year, our stock dropped by 42%. It could not have been easy, and it probably was not fair, to expect a CEO who had spent only 2 years at Starbucks to operate unencumbered in the shadow of a person who had built the company and led it for years, especially when that individual was as visible and influential as I had become inside Starbucks. In retrospect, I could have done a better job of preparing Orrin's inevitable departure. Yeah. I often think that the best person to have led Starbucks would have been someone who had been inside the company for many years. As we had done from our early years, Starbucks was doing its best to invest ahead in the growth curve, by example, building new roasting plants and distribution facilities before they were absolutely necessary to supply our stores. But as we opened more stores, it became almost impossible to effectively keep up the pace of investment. That reality, combined with the deteriorating customer experience I was witnessing in stores and the complaints I was hearing from colleagues, pushed me to act. That was why, in February 2007, as chairman, I sat down at my kitchen table to write a memo to Jim and Starbucks' leadership team. Over the past 10 years, in order to achieve the growth, development, and scale necessary to go from less than 1,000 stores to 13,000 stores and beyond, we have had to make a series of decisions that, in retrospect, have led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience and what some might call the commoditization of our brand. Many of these decisions were probably right at the time, and on their own merit would not have created the dilution of the experience. But in this case, the sum is much greater, and unfortunately, much more damaging than the individual pieces. It was never my intent to attack or to assign blame. We are all responsible for the problems I saw surfacing and we're about to air. Our problems were, in large part, self-induced, and I desperately wanted all of our leaders to feel the level of distress that I felt knowing that Starbucks was under attack, mostly from within. This is how I feel. A well-built brand in the culmination of intangibles that do not directly flow in the revenue of profitability of a company, but contribute to its texture. Forsaking them can take a subtle collective toll. I always say that Starbucks is at its best when we are creating enduring relationships and personal connections. It's the essence of our brand, but not simple to achieve. Many layers go into eliciting such an emotional response. Starbucks is intensely personal. Aside from brushing their teeth, what else do so many people do habitually every day? They drink coffee. Same time, same store, same beverage. There's a special relationship millions have developed with our brand, our people, our stores, and our coffee. Preserving that relationship is an honorable but enormous responsibility. In 2006, as I visited hundreds of Starbucks stores in the cities around the world, the entrepreneurial merchant in me sensed something intrinsic to Starbucks' brand was missing. An aura, a spirit. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. No one thing was sapping at the stores of a certain soul. Rather, the unintended consequences resulting from the absence of several things that had distinguished our brand were, I fear, silently deflating it. In the memo, I spelled out my concerns. New espresso machines that we had installed in stores, while effectively increasing efficiency, were too tall. This unforeseen barrier prevented customers on one side of the coffee bar from watching baristas on the other side create their beverages. The height also kept baristas from engaging with customers in the same manner, and had chanted me back in Milan. I expressed this concern in the memo. When we went to the automatic espresso machines, we solved a major problem in terms of speed, of service, and efficiency. At the same time, we overlooked the fact that we could remove much of the romance and the theater that was in play. Also in stores, the full-bodied, suggestive, rich aroma of freshly ground coffee had become weak to non-existent, due in large part to how we shipped and stored coffee grounds. Without it, Starbucks lost a way to tell a story that transported customers out of their day to far-flung places like Costa Rica and Africa. Ever since I had been with the company, we had banned smoking and asked partners not to wear perfume or cologne to preserve the coffee aroma. It is perhaps the most sensory aspect of our brand, and it reinforces the core of who we are, purveyors of the world's highest quality coffees. Again, I articulated this in the memo. We achieve fresh roasted bad coffee, but at what cost? The loss of aroma, perhaps the most powerful nonverbal signal we had in our stores. The loss of our people scooping fresh coffee from the bins and grinding it fresh in front of the customer. And once again stripping the store of tradition and our heritage. Finally, the store's design, so critical to atmosphere, seemed to lack the warm, cozy feeling of a neighborhood gathering place. Some people called our interior spaces cookie cutter or sterile. Clearly, we have had to streamline store design to gain efficiencies of scale. But one of the results has been stores that no longer have the soul of the past. Without these sensory triggers, something about visiting a Starbucks vanished. The unique sights, smells, and charms that Starbucks introduced into the marketplace define our brand. If coffee and people are the core, the overall experience is our soul. We desperately need to get back to the core and make the changes necessary to evoke the heritage, the tradition, and the passion that we all have for the true Starbucks experience. I wrote adding that competitors of all kinds were breathing down our necks. I could not allow us or myself to drift into the sea of mediocrity after so many years of hard work. I just could not do it. The time had come to speak up from the heart. I said for 20 years that our success is not an entitlement, and now it's proving to be a reality. Let's get back to the core, push for innovation, and do the things necessary to once again differentiate Starbucks from all others. We have an enormous responsibility to both the people who have come before us, our partners, and their families who are relying on our stewardship. I titled the email, "The Commoditization of the Starbucks experience. On Valentine's Day 2007, my longtime assistant, Nancy Kent, typed up my handwritten thoughts, and after I made a few changes, emailed it to Jim and his team. I hope my impassioned plea would unleash an honest, provocative conversation, prompting us to look in the mirror and get back to our core. Instead, the memo unleashed a public furor. Ooh. All right, cool. That was chapter 3. Very, this hits down to my core, actually, because in our company, we've been trying to scale or grow or whatever it is. And we didn't really know how to do that. And it's kind of like trying to grow into a jacket, but you're really you're infantile. You have this new jacket, but it's made for an adult, and it doesn't fit, and it's awesome, and it could do so much. It has so much potential, but we lack the skill to actually grow into that. And that's what we're working on right now. It's been very challenging over this past year to do that. We've gone through people, we've gone through systems, we've damaged and hurt each other in this business, and it's what Howard says, businesses are very personal. It's been my life for the last 10 years or so, or more actually. So and it's so cool to be reading this now. How funny, right? How funny that my mentor would send me this right now. He's probably paying attention. I've been going through so many changes, emotionally, personally, which in turn affects the business. And so hopefully all for the best too. I don't speak of this morbidly. This is all something that needs to happen in order for us to change to the gear that we need to change to. Like what he was saying is like, dude, yeah, we've been focusing so much on growing and scaling up and this entitlement of, ooh, we are Starbucks. And also us too, like, ooh, we have been here 10 years, this entitlement of, look at me, stroking our egos. And that's something definitely I'm now very, very aware of, and that we need to grow at a pace that makes sense, and really come back and scale back and look at things for what they are, instead of saying, hey, we should be this, and then acting like we're there already, which is a good mentality to have, but it's also assessing what you really have, the cards that you have in front of you, and playing the hand. It's more like, I guess, being present. Jesus Christ. Okay. Husband is texting me. Must be an emergency. It must be... Now I'm off my track. So, anyway, to sum up, I want to be able to come back with our team, with each other. I feel like that's what we're doing right now. This reflects so much of me, of what I'm feeling and going through. Not only me, but also my teammates and my husband, in my marriage and in our business. And so this is so cool to be reading this, guys. Let's continue. Let's keep going. Tomorrow or the next time I see you, we'll be on chapter 4, Onward by Howard Schultz. See ya.